You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. For college students, saying you majored in computer science used to be code, forgive the pun, for a six-figure salary and job stability. Now, some fear those days are behind us. Since 2014, the number of undergraduates majoring in computer science has more than doubled, but the job offers are not flowing like they used to. That's according to reporting from Natasha Singer at the New York Times that looks at how recent graduates are faring in the job market. Natasha Singer covers technology at the Times. Natasha, thanks so much for being on Soundside today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
The headline really got me. Goodbye $165,000 tech jobs. Student coders seek work at Chipotle. Is that really happening, Natasha? I mean, how tough is it out there right now for computer science graduates? What did you discover in your reporting?
That's why we did the story, because as you know, for more than the last decade or so, the tech industry, Google, Microsoft, executives, tech billionaires, President Obama, President Trump, everybody's been saying to students, if you just learn computer science, if you just know how to program computers, you will get a six-figure salary and computer science will magic you into power and upward mobility. And the kids who are graduating now from college with degrees in computer science heard this a decade ago. And some of the students we interviewed started coding in elementary school because they believed this was the golden ticket, not just to lucrative careers, but interesting jobs in tech. And unfortunately, because of kind of a perfect storm of circumstances, one of which is AI, it's much harder this year for students to get jobs. And one of the things we found, which is in the headline, is we found students graduating from major universities applying for jobs at McDonald's and Chipotle, trying to tide them over while they try to figure out how they can get a tech job.
What's going on here? I mean, is this a case of there's a glut of workers? Is this a case of the industry is tightening its belt and we just don't see the pathway to entry-level jobs that we used to? I mean, what's behind these higher unemployment numbers for recent computer science grads?
I would say there are three major factors. One is AI, in the sense that companies like Microsoft are shifting their priorities and they're racing to expand AI infrastructure, like building these new massive data centers and stockpiling AI chips so they can compete with each other. And that means if you're going to put more resources, hundreds of billions of dollars into building data centers, you're going to have to cut something. And so you're going to shrink your human capital. You're going to shrink the workforce. And we saw Microsoft announce layoffs this year of more than 15,000. Intel said last month it plans to shrink its workforce by more than 25,000. Smaller companies are shrinking their workforce. So one is just there are a shrinking number of jobs because of the shift to AI. The second thing is because there are new AI coding tools like Claude Copilot and Microsoft Copilot GitHub, that companies are encouraging their software engineers to use. And these AI coding tools generate thousands of lines of code and they can suggest code and then the software engineer decides to accept the code or not. Those tools can make software developers and engineers much more productive, right? The code generates much more code much faster. And that means that if you have old code bases that need to be updated, that humans would normally do, and that we might consider grunt work, the AI can take a thing that would have taken weeks and make it take days. And so the first things to be automated are the kind of practices and work that you would say, new college grads would do. And furthermore, the on-ramp to a lot of these tech jobs, software engineer roles, used to be summer internships at Microsoft and Google and Meta and all these other places. And students said those were always hard to get, but those are also drying up, students said. So there's a problem at the beginning of the pipeline. And I think the last thing is that more and more companies are using automatic applicant tracking systems, which is when AI reads your resume. Students say they're being automatically rejected by these systems, and they're working really, really hard to game the system and stick in all the keywords that the AI might be looking for. But these applicant tracking systems are very, very opaque. And so students have no idea what they're being rejected on. And we heard from more than 150 recent college grads from universities across the country, including private institutions like Stanford, like Cornell, and big state schools like the University of Maryland and the University of Michigan and UT Austin. And some of them have applied to hundreds of jobs. A few of them applied to thousands of jobs. Many of them still didn't even get to the interview stage.
Tell me about what you heard from some of these interviews, Natasha, because it strikes me that these grads feel a sense of a promise broken, or that there had been some sort of contract, because they've been told for so many years that this was the path to a stable job, that the disappointment is major, and it's really painful and difficult. So tell me what you heard from these interviews.
I think you're absolutely right, Libby, that the students, it's hard for all recent grads to get jobs this year. Unemployment is up among recent grads, but it's particularly hard for computer science students who feel they chose this because the industry made them a promise. And now, the tech industry moves fast and it pivots and innovation happens and students understand that. And yet, this was the deal and they agreed to it, right? And so so we heard from more than 150 students at large state schools, at big private schools, at smaller private institutions. And here's some of what they said. They said, the process is extremely discouraging, incredibly disheartening, incredibly frustrating, soul crushing. It seems like my degree doesn't matter. I feel gaslit about my career prospects. Some of my skills are now worthless. It's awful. It's too demoralizing. I spent the last 18 months applying to over 200 positions that I spent 4 years training to do, which has led to 2 interviews and no jobs. Many of them never emailed me back. So far, my life has been a big ramp up to a beautiful career until the moment a company was supposed to hire me for my skill, and then absolute dead silence.
I know that at least one of the folks that you interviewed and featured in the story is kind of pivoting and looking at more of a sales role now, because she just was running into a brick wall and was having so much difficulty finding a programming job. Are there other folks that you spoke to who are just thinking they're going to leave the field?
I think that different students are trying to forge different pathways. The student you mentioned in our story from Purdue, she had trouble getting an internship, which is normally the on-ramp to these big tech jobs. And so, she'd worked for startups, but not for big companies. And she had a side gig as a beauty influencer on TikTok, where she has a lot of getting ready with me makeup videos, and she gets a percentage of what viewers buy. And she realized that she loved that and she was great at it. And she applied for a sales job in tech and she got that job. And so, she realized she was more interested in that and better at that than software engineering. So that actually ended up well. What I heard from other students it was quite interesting. One student had been interested in a humanities field and yet majored in computer science because, he was told that's where the jobs were. And he ended up double majoring in computer science and this other field. And now he's going to get a PhD in the humanities discipline with some AI, and not pursue this traditional software engineering pathway, who, he said he had heard since middle school was the way to go. I think you have a number of other students who feel lost. As big tech companies ask software engineers to rely more and more on AI coding tools, the difficulty for the students graduating now is their computer science departments didn't make learning these coding tools part of their education. They were in university when ChatGPT launched. And if you remember at the beginning of ChatGPT, there was universal panic and schools banned them and universities tried to get students not to use them. And so this is also kind of the sandwich generation of computer science students who graduated too late, to be computer programmers, and maybe too soon to be software engineers who direct a fleet of AI coding tools. Some students are certainly learning how to use these tools on their own. But I also think for a lot of students, they feel lost and they've applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs and they've reached out to people on LinkedIn. And if you didn't go to a huge brand name school and you don't come from a family who has industry connections, or somebody on LinkedIn doesn't respond to you and doesn't put in a referral for you, it's really, really hard right now.
Mm. It sounds like there are some efforts by different players, including President Trump, big players in the industry, Microsoft, to offset the effects of AI on computer science grads. Do you think that there's any relief on the horizon here?
I think that there is a lot of anxiety among college students, recent grads, parents, and others about what employment is going to look like in an AI era. And I think computer science is basically on the forefront. It's the canary in the coal mine. We're seeing this first. But, I talked to photographers who used to send, if they were doing, advertising photography, images out for retouching. But you don't need a retoucher anymore because AI can do that, right? Or, PR campaigns used to have graphic designers, but now you can do that in-house with AI. So we're seeing all kinds of jobs that generative AI is going to be able to do. And so this question of is relief coming? Honestly, I think we don't know how it's going to shake out. One really interesting thing I heard, though, was the CEO of NVIDIA was at a conference in Dubai last year. And he was asked on the stage, what would you suggest college students major in now? And he said, for the last decade, any tech CEO who has sat on a stage like this would have said, of course, they should major in computer science. And I'm telling you, don't major in computer science because the AI will do that. If it were me starting now, I would pick a basic science like biology, where there's huge room for discovery and innovation. And I would marry that with AI. And I think that that's interesting. But it's also interesting because for a long time, we told kids there were no jobs in humanities. They should major in computer science or data science because your human skills weren't going to be valuable. And I think the rush to AI-ify everything actually points to the fact that we're going to need these human skills more and more. And it's going to be more important to sort of make sure that if AI is used, that it doesn't cause harm. Like, you need human coders to read the AI code to make sure that it's not garbage, right? So it's not like coding is over. People are still going to have to know syntax and logic and algorithmic thinking, or we're going to have code bases that are full of like AI junk. And, 5 years from now, a lot of software isn't going to work. So I also don't think computer science is over.
That's Natasha Singer, technology reporter at the New York Times. Thank you, Natasha.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get too excited about the definitely rising value of a humanities degree, we wanted to find out how current computer science students and experts are feeling about the future of their field. I'm turning now to Professor Ed Lazowska, an emeritus professor at the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. Ed, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So here's what I'd say. It's certainly the case that the job market for computer science graduates is tighter now than it was a few years ago. But first of all, the alarmist doom and gloom is not what our graduates are experiencing. Secondly, the tightening isn't attributable to AI programming tools. And third, advances in AI are going to impact employment in many sectors, and everybody needs to be aware and to prepare. So the sort of intensive focus on tech employment specifically, I think, is misplaced. We all have to think about what the future holds.
Tell me more about that. You said that the tightening in the employment market, you don't attribute it to AI tools, but we're hearing that some of these entry-level jobs, some of the coding that maybe would be done by entry-level people will now be replaced by AI. But you don't think that that's what's happening here?
That will happen. It will happen across all fields. There was a wonderful New York Times article back in May, an opinion piece that was titled something like "The Bottom Rungs of the Career Ladder Are Breaking." Let me back up to the experience our graduates are finding this year for a second, because that's context for the programming tools. The Allen School is distinctive in several ways. We're one of the top computer science programs in the nation. and we're in one of the top technology regions in the nation. So the job market is tighter than it was in 2022 in the preceding decade. But our graduates this year took software engineering positions at over 120 different companies. Amazon hired more than 100 of our new graduates this year. Okay? Google and Meta hired fewer than that, but more than they hired last year. And Microsoft was down a bit from last year, but still hired more than 24 of our new graduates. And we've got students still looking for jobs, but that number is similar to this time last year or the year before. So things are different over the past 3 years than they were in 2022 and the decade preceding that. But there's no sudden change this year that our graduates see. And that suggests that what's going on is not attributable to AI programming tools. First of all, there's a decrease in hiring because of overexuberant hiring during the pandemic. Right? Second, companies have a need to invest large sums on the computational infrastructure to support increased use of AI. You may need to control headcount to compensate. Third, and this is a bit esoteric, there was a change in the tax code in 2017 during Trump 1 that actually took effect in 2022. And previously, the costs of R&D, which includes software engineers at tech companies, could be expensed in the year in which these costs were incurred. And now they have to be amortized over 5 or more years. Fourth, there's a need for employees with more AI expertise in all kinds of companies, including tech companies. And unfortunately, this can cause reductions in some areas to allow hiring in other areas. So that's what's going on.
What about the anxiety in the workforce right now, especially, for new grads? Are you hearing fears about what the career ladder is going to look like? Are you hearing, students expressing worries about the future for a computer science degree and its usefulness?
Absolutely. I think everybody is worried, but I think people are worried in all fields. And I want to emphasize this. Advances in AI are going to impact employment in many sectors. Everybody needs to prepare. Technology has driven changes in employment forever. 150 years ago, half of the labor force in America worked on farms, right? And today it's 1.5%. What's different now is the pace of change is increasing relentlessly. The changes are impacting white-collar jobs more than before. When I think about sort of how to prepare, the best general overview of AI I've heard was a 20-minute Harvard Business School interview of my UW colleague, Ora Netzioni, back on April 9th. You can find it on YouTube. And one of the many smart things Oren said was, you won't be replaced by an AI system, but you might be replaced by a person who uses AI better than you. And that's true across all fields.
So if somebody were today to come to you and say, is learning to code a ticket to a good job, what would you say to them? I mean, has that changed? Because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was seen as like, that is your safety net choice to go into, a degree program to learn to code or to go to a coding boot camp. Do you think that's still the case?
Okay, so I'm going to come at this from 2 different angles. First of all, computer science has always been a field that changes faster than any other field. So top programs like ours educate students in timeless fundamentals that prepare them for lifelong learning. We don't graduate coders, we graduate software engineers. All right, so coding is the translation of a well-specified design into an executable program. Coding is dead. AI can do that. Okay, coding was never what our curriculum was focused on. Software engineering is the creative and conceptually challenging work of working in teams to figure out how to solve a complex problem and then bringing that solution to life. And it's going to transform due to AI, but it's transformed many times over the decades. The other thing I'd say is, you go to college to prepare yourself to be a citizen of the world, and preparing for employment is part of that, but college isn't vocational school. So what I tell a student is major in something you're excited about and passionate about. And if that's computer science, great. And if it's something else, do something else. And if the employment downturn causes the students who were majoring in computer science, not because they loved it, because they thought it would get them a job, then I'm perfectly happy to have them in some other major.
I think the question that we all have in our minds is this, what will AI mean for us? And is it already here? And I'm hearing a compelling case from you to say there are a lot of forces, including venture capital, earnings expectations, all kinds of forces in in the environment that are creating the layoffs that we're seeing and maybe the tighter job market. If you were to give the best advice to prepare for AI moving forward, what would it be?
Well, you have to learn to use AI, right? And that is true no matter what field you're in, right? So suppose you're an associate at a law firm, right? You're going to be using AI to do your work. So learn to use AI. And, at the University of Washington, we have to educate three different types of people. In computer science, we have to educate people to move the field forward, to move AI forward. Okay. Across the campus, we need to educate people to use AI in advanced ways. Our biologists and our astronomers are using AI. Right? And across the entire campus, for every student, they have to be able to thrive in a world where AI is everywhere. And so we have to provide those three different types of education for different people across the campus. And all of this has to be done with an eye towards the ethical use of AI and the issues that AI can inadvertently cause. Every technology has its uses and its abuses. Brad Smith had a book titled Tools and Weapons, and that's really true for every technology.
Ed Lazowska is an emeritus professor at the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. So if I had to sum this up really quickly, Professor, it sounds like what you're saying is that things are getting tougher for computer science grads. However, UW students, people who are graduating from your program, are looking really good, and that there are still ways to succeed in this market today. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely right. Furthermore, jobs are tighter in a wide range of fields. We're all going to be impacted by AI. We have to prepare for it.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Great to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. And hey, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.